Okay, story time. I've had a lot of people asking me what this is, why I'm in a wheelchair, what my conditions are, etc. So I thought I would just come on here and share my story. Last year, in May, I got the daith of my ear pierced to prevent my migraines. Well, it became severely infected, and then my middle ear got infected, and then my eardrum perforated. My ear was huge, red, infected, obviously had to take the earring out. Well, it turned out that infection, even though the doctors gave me an antibiotic, the infection went to my lungs. I became septic. My lungs collapsed, and I could not breathe. My lips turned blue. It also attacked my heart, my kidneys, and my liver. So I was rushed to the hospital, and I had to wear this mask so I could breathe. When they looked me over, they realized that my condition was pretty bad, so they had to send me to Erie Hospital. When I was in Erie Hospital, I was put on a separate mask, and then eventually they had to cut open my neck and put in this thing called a trach and connect me to what's called a ventilator. A ventilator is this big machine that forces in air to go through your lungs. Because my lungs were collapsed, this would open them up so I could breathe, so I could stay alive. So this ventilator was keeping me alive. Well, it turns out that my blood also wasn't circulating correctly, so I had to be on another machine called ECMO. ECMO is this big machine that cycles your blood, cleans it, and then puts it back into your body. My body kept filling up with CO2 and would almost kill me time and time again. So it's this big blood tube, and you can see some scarring on my neck where it went into my neck, and then it also was sewn up my leg and then into my groin. So I don't remember any of that at all. At the Erie Hospital, they cannot deal with patients on ECMO, so I had to be life-flighted to Pittsburgh, where I was at Presby Hospital. When I got there, they put me in a medically induced coma and paralyzed me. Now, before I get into all the serious stuff, let me tell you, before all of this, I was a 20-year-old woman. No, I wasn't even 20 yet. I was 19. I was a 19-year-old single mom, raising a 6-month-old baby boy, breastfeeding, working my dream job, 61 hours a week, had my own place. I was blessed, beyond blessed. I couldn't be happier. I had a best friend that was always by my side. It was the life. I mean, I had everything. And then it hit. So back to the coma. I had a stroke, and I had several seizures. And I also had to be shocked several times because of my heart. My heart rate would get really, really high, and I would have all these problems with my heart, and they would have to shock me again and again and again. So that was really scary. Throughout my coma, I had terrible nightmares. Terrible, graphic, painful nightmares that I will never forget. And in my coma, I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know where I was or what was going on. I felt like I had died and gone to hell. It was terrifying. When they finally woke me up, I wasn't really with it yet, but all I remember was I was on this big machine, this breathing for me. I had tubes in my nose, my feeding tubes. I had a catheter in. I had an A line in my arm. I had a C line. I had a central line. I mean, you name it. Like, I was hooked up to all these machines, all these IVs, all these medications, and then of course the ECMO. sewn into my leg was terrifying. Because I had been in that coma and paralyzed for that long, I had wasted away to nothing. I was skin and bones, and I couldn't move. When you're on the ventilator, you also cannot talk. Because I was on feeding tubes, I could not eat. So it was really hard. I remember my mom telling me that Brentley, my son, was 9 months old. I just shook my head. I bawled. I couldn't believe that my little boy was 3 months older than what seemed to be a second ago. So that was really hard. I went through a lot of high anxiety. I didn't want to do stuff. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to try. A lot of depression. A lot of suicidal thoughts. It was the hardest experience of my entire life. My lungs got holes in them. ARDS is what it's called. And then eventually, those holes scarred. And now I have what's called pulmonary fibrosis. So, a normal person's lungs are like a balloon. You blow them up, they inflate, and then they go down. Well, my lungs are like trying to blow up a water balloon. Blow it up, and it does not expand like a balloon should. So my lungs take these little breaths instead of these big breaths. I was on the ventilator, unable to speak, and unable to eat for 6 months. I believe I was on ECMO for 3 months. They had to clean me, dress me, change me, everything. Like I could not do anything for myself. If I picked up my hands, they would literally shake. There was a point where I became necrotic, and my toes and my fingers started to turn black because my body was dying. I lost a part of my toe due to that, but thankfully my fingers and toes are no longer black. Although I do not have feeling in my left fingers anymore. So when I was in the coma, the doctor told my mom that there was a 2% chance of me living, to go home and prepare my funeral. My whole family was told I was not going to make it. There's no way this child is going to make it through it. I did. And then I was on the ventilator. It was very hard for them to wean me down, because once you get weaned down off the ventilator, you get on what's called a trach mask. But I fought it hard, and I didn't want things to change. I just kind of wanted to die. I didn't want to try. Eventually they got me on my feet. I was so weak. It took 6 people to stand me for the first time. Eventually I could walk a little bit with a walker, but I would give up immediately. But then eventually I became stronger. I was taking longer walks, and the ventilator was weaning down even less. They thought that I would never come off the ventilator, and they told me I would live in a nursing home for the rest of my life, and I would never raise my son. But I was healthy enough to go back to Erie, which is a lot closer to home. So they life-flighted me back to Erie, and I went to a hospital called a Hammett Hospital in Erie. It was a godsend. I met this amazing woman named Kay. She was a senior respiratory therapist who deals with trachs, who deals with the oxygen, and she and I hit it off like that. She made me feel comfortable. She made me feel safe. And within 2 weeks, I was off of the ventilator completely, breathing just oxygen. was awesome. She is now my second mom. She visits me, she buys me gifts, she takes me out. It's such an inspirational woman. She's my angel. So, at this point I didn't have the feeding tube anymore. It was moved to my stomach actually, because my body was rejecting it. In the nose, I would throw up, but my tube feeds all the time. So they had to move it to my stomach. But then eventually I could eat again, which was amazing. Although I was afraid at first to eat because I thought I would choke on everything. But finally I could take medicine by mouth, I could eat, I could drink. It was great. Because the whole time I was on the ventilator, that 6 months, I couldn't drink, not even water, which drove me insane. So finally, I got off the ventilator. I was way past off the ECMO. I was eating regular foods. My feeding tube from my stomach was gone. I was on oxygen, and I eventually was walking without a walker. So it was amazing. At this point, I was still very sick. I still am very sick. But they felt that it was time to move me out of the hospital and into a rehabilitation center to work with physical and occupational therapy. That's where I'm at right now. It is also a nursing home, so I am surrounded by several elderly people who will die here, and it is a very sad place. But I have made amazing friends, several connections, and I feel like God has brought me here for a reason. When I came here, I was on 60% oxygen. I am now down to 21% oxygen. I am almost ready to breathe the normal air. When I got this, I got this. This is my speaking valve. It makes it so I breathe and can speak at the same time. Without it, it's hard to talk. The air goes in, but it can't come out. So it forces it through my vocal cords and out my nose. So that is what is causing me to be able to talk. So, I have a wheelchair that I wheel around here with, but I work with physical therapy and occupational therapy on a daily basis. I take 2 to 3 walks a day. I get up and go to the bathroom by myself. I walk. I can get around. I can change myself now. I can eat. I can feed myself. I can get ready by myself. Like, I do everything by myself now, and it feels amazing. Like, I'm finally starting to feel human again. I started to wear makeup again. I started to do my hair again. I started to wear regular clothes. So, the next step is to downsize on my trach. This is a size 6. In a couple weeks, we're going to be changing it to a size 4. And then after that, once I get off of the oxygen completely and I'm breathing room air, they will cap it, which means put like a cover over it. So I'll be able to talk, but I won't be breathing out of my trach any longer. I'll be breathing just out of my nose and my mouth. And when that's done, then they will take the trach out completely, cover it up with gauze, and in 2 to 3 days, the skin heals itself back together, and I will no longer have this trach in my neck, and I will be breathing like a normal person. And I'm regaining my strength every single day, and I will be walking. And before summer, I will be back home with my son, healthy. Never the same, but healthy. I will always have pulmonary fibrosis, but I will be better. I'll be able to sing and dance and do everything that I wasn't able to do. So, if anybody has any questions, I also have my entire story on Facebook. If you want, just message me and I will send you the link. And that is everything. Lots of love.